long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, Constant Reader Scott Daly, and I'm joined by my expert hound dog, Matt Frisky Freeman.
That's right, and I'm feeling frisky because I'm hot on the trail of literary analysis.
Oh my God, we should win an award for that intro. Do they have best intro podcasting awards? Let's make one and give ourselves the award.
See, I agree with you, except not sarcastically.
This week on the show, part 4 of our series covering Stephen King's The Eyes of the Dragon continues. This week, we're discussing chapters 72 through 101. As things continue to get worse and worse in the city of Delane, Peter's escape rope gets longer and longer. But will it be ready in time? And what the hell is our friend Pena planning? Yeah, that's right, Matt. I said Pena because apparently his name is not Pena. Like I reversed some letters in my mind.
Well, in the tradition of our podcasts and mispronouncing things, we're going to acknowledge it this one time and then never mention that we made the mistake again.
Yeah. The fun part about it is I think people are so used to us like being fucky with pronunciations intentionally that they just assumed that we were doing it on purpose, because I got very few emails about this one.
Well, I honestly just thought that it was Pena because that's how he was saying it in the audiobook. And then at a certain point, it was like he switched over to saying Pena, and I was like, that's weird.
I mean, it's exactly what we're about to do. So is it weird?
That's true.
So Matt, what did you think of these chapters, these 30 or so chapters?
Well, I feel like we are in the heading toward the climax, right? There's more action, more people moving around and making dramatic decisions and putting themselves at risk. You know, I think the characters who have, you could put it one way, betrayed Peter are trying to make amends at this point, and they're putting themselves at risk. And obviously following Peter's, fraught struggles in the tower that's a great source of drama. And on the whole, I'm just enjoying the hell out of this book so far.
Yeah, it's been such a fun ride with it. And I think the book is way more clever than I ever gave it credit for the first few times I read it. Like I like there's a lot going on here with King. And I think there's some really fun stuff that I kind of discovered when thinking about this book this week that I can't wait to talk to you about.
Yeah, me too.
Before we get started, though, we do have a couple quick announcements. You want to handle the first one, Matt?
Sure. So this week, our bonus Patreon only podcast, Other Levels of the Tower, covered the film adaptation of Hearts in Atlantis, the Anthony Hopkins, Anton Yelchin film, which basically is an adaptation of the story Low Men in Yellow Coats. We had a good conversation about that movie. What was similar, what was different between the adaptation and the film, or between the film and the story rather, and then just the qualities of the film overall, because it's a pretty well made film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. I think there's a lot to say about the differences between this movie and its source material, and some really interesting choices on both sides of it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find that over on our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia, where you can find that episode and 12 other episodes of this continuing series, Other Levels of the Tower. You just need to support us at that $10 level or higher to get that and a bunch of other bonus podcasts and cool stuff we do. There's a ton there. Check it out.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to do here at the beginning is we kind of put a feeler out last week for a new Doof Media glossary term, which was an official term for what happens when Stephen King kind of like goes off on a digression about a specific character and we learn way more about this character. We got a ton of responses, Matt. I don't even think I captured them all here on our list, but I wanted to go through them and at least acknowledge them and see maybe if we can pick one here. So yeah, you want to go down this list?
Yeah, let's go through. So the first one from Green Mountain Bot says King Cab Ride.
I think that's in honor of our cab driver that we got a lot more information about than we were expecting. And I don't even have to specify a book because there are multiple books in which we've gotten a ton of information about cab drivers in Stephen King novels.
It does seem like he uses that as a favorite mode of inserting a funny character.
Yeah. AL84001 says either King Gresham, Meander King, or Down a Were Rabbit Hole. Those are all fun.
Those are. I think Meander King is my favorite, actually. The next is from Lord of Chains called Chasing the Squirrel.
I think this is in reference to our very first episode in which I kind of explained to you that Stephen King does this thing where like he'll definitely be like a dog chasing a squirrel, but then he'll tell you the entire backstory of the squirrel's life while he's doing it, which is funny because I love when people remind me of things I've said, which I should probably remember myself, but if not, I don't remember saying that at all. But it does sound like something I'd say.
I also have no memory of this, but yeah, you probably said it.
Just Stand 8460 says either going king dash or just king dashing. I like that.
Yeah, that's very fun. Shortstop 88 says focus character, which if you said it properly would be focus character, but that's pretty hard to say, but it's very funny when written down. Yes.
Otherworlds 1999 says a king sidle. I like that.
Yeah, that's fun. Walking Dude 22 says spelunking or cave diving.
That's good. Dan T says either Steven's side piece, King Query, or Callahan examination, or a Delgado dig. I like the alliteration going on here.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And then finally, last suggestion that we have here, Anthony says background king formation.
See, here's the thing. People might not know this, but I think one of the stipulations of being an official Doof Media glossary term is it has to be completely incomprehensible to anyone that doesn't know the context of the reference. For example, one of our most famous ones is eating chocolate, which is in one of the other books we read, Matt decided that a character was up to no good and evil merely because how he was eating a chocolate bar. Yeah. And so that is, whenever we use that, it means one of us is going on a conspiracy theory that is much too detailed with not enough evidence at all.
Very tenuously supported line of thought would be the chocolate. So
under those guidelines, I mean, I think a lot of these will work pretty well.
I mean, I think Meander King is my favorite just because of how it sounds, honestly. But a lot of them are funny. I don't know if we have to decide right now, though.
We don't. I think let's give it some time. Let's let the audience kind of feel out what they think as well, and we can come with a decision later. I do like Meander King. I like King Gresham as well. I like King Dashin because it also kind of matches our show name.
Yeah, you can see you're going. Like Just Stand says here, you're going King Dash. I can see myself saying that. So
yeah, all right, that was fun. Let's get into the work though, Matt. Let's begin with chapter 72. Our reading this week begins with Peter searching for a place in his tower to hide his ever-growing rope. He, of course, finds a loose stone in his prison, and inside that loose stone finds a locket and a note. The note is from over 450 years ago, where Valera, the next potential king of Delaine, was imprisoned after supposedly killing his wife. But, of course, we learn here that it was another frame job, and the culprit responsible for this, of course, it's Flag. I love the text here. It was not I who poisoned her wine. I write the name of the murderer here in blood. Flag. 'Twas Flag. 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 I love that. And I did listen to the audiobook version of these chapters this week as well. And God, Bronson Pinchot does such a good job with this note. So good.
It's just the best. Yeah, it's absolutely chilling. Yeah, I love it so much.
Yeah. I do love the kind of inherent uncreativity of Flag, though. Like, he's basically, we learned here that he's done this exact same thing before in like the exact same way, poisoned wine. And so it's just like he's this incredibly powerful magician who can do all these tricks, and it's just like, we'll just do the old poison the wine trick.
Yep, gets him every time.
Yeah, and really the only reason he's getting away with it is because he can afford to wait hundreds of years between attempts. So the cases have gone pretty cold.
Yeah. That's a good point. For some reason, I really just love this little peek into the ancient history of Delaine via Valera. It's just really fun. Like, we're so inundated in Midworld, and we have been for so long, that I think sometimes I just kind of forget what a fun concept this is, where we have like knights and gunslingers and knight gunslingers, and just this fun pastiche of genre concepts where, you know, and as far as it goes, this book is pretty much fantasy in a fairly straightforward way, but he still manages to put spins on certain things and make them just more fun and exciting and novel.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's It's a fascinating little world we see, and we get to learn actually a lot more about ancient Elaine than just this little bit here. We get some more coming up in a few minutes, and yeah, it seems like a pretty fascinating little kingdom. And I love that, I love that we just get a little. This is just a little window into this whole long history of this place. The story is.
Yeah.
So I really like this sentence as well. Peter's face was deadly white. His hair was standing on end. For the first time, he realized that Flag, the king's magician, was in reality Flag the monster, loose in Delane again now, serving a new king, serving his own young, confused, easily led brother. So, I mean, I just love this idea that, like, the revelation that Flag is hundreds and hundreds of years old transforms him from just a human being to something much, much more and much, much worse.
Yeah, I mean, calling him a monster is quite appropriate, especially when we know outside the story context, he's barely human at all.
Yeah.
And it's just very gratifying to see a character finally realize who Flag is before it's too late. Because it honestly, having seen Flag through like if in very tangential ways through like 10 or 12 books or something at this point, it's kind of satisfying to see somebody finally be like, okay, I get it. You're like a really bad, evil guy and you're like a monster and we need to deal with you specifically.
Yeah. I mean, and he's so far the only one that knows the full extent of it. But I mean, that by the end of this week's reading, that note is going to be at least brought to Dennis. So we'll see if who all understands. I mean, I guess it's very hard for me to like weave around this idea that you don't know when this takes place in the history of Midworld. There is a way for you to know, and I know, but the book has not said anything yet. So like I've kind of having constantly skirt around where and when this takes place, and it's been increasingly difficult. So like this idea of like this history, like where it places Delane and where it places now in the wider Midworld world, is interesting. But of course, you don't know yet.
But as long as it will at some point. I guess I just thought it was like a story that Roland knew of the past. I thought that it could just be a fake memory of mine. But
I mean, you're not wrong. One of the things, actually, one of our listeners emailed, a listener named April emailed us over the past week, kind of positing this idea that perhaps the narrator of this story is a gunslinger, and this is a story told by gunslingers. Because I mean, you can start to see there's a lot of qualities of the characters we like in the story that I think would be heavily valued by a gunslinger. So you can see this in a similar way that we maybe considered Win Through the Keyhole, the idea that this is a story told and passed down to young gunslingers to encourage them. Of course, the Flag part of that complicates things because although I guess in Gilead, he never referred to himself as Flag. He was always Martin. So.
Yeah, right. I was just thinking about how bizarre it is for me to grapple with the fact that this is the Man in Black. This is the one who fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. It's the same character. Yeah.
I do enjoy complete tangent, but I enjoy, like, I sometimes visit the Dark Tower subreddit, and it seems like every few weeks there's a thing on there that like, okay, so which ones are Flag? It's and like this is the same thing we struggled with, right? Because a lot of times the arguments before the books kind of contradicted the things that the book said. Like nowhere in the book proper does it actually say that the Man in Black is also John Farson, the good man. Right. But King says that in his argument at the beginning of the book, and so it's just like it's hilarious watching people grapple with this, because I totally get it, because I studied this book forever and there's still not a clear delineation of who actually is who.
Yeah, I think the answer is just they're all Flag.
Yes. I do think this little quote here that I read, it's interesting to me, and one thing I was thinking about with this idea that we've seen a whole lot of what Thomas's opinions of Peter are. We has his level of jealousy and anger, but also brotherly love. But King has kind of been played very close to the chest about like what Peter's opinions of his younger brother are. Like all we've seen is like through the lens of Thomas, like at least Peter being somewhat aware that he was being favored over his brother. But this line here, this flag the monster loose and Delane again, serving a new king, serving his own young, confused, easily led brother, is really the first hint of the way Peter considers his younger brother.
Yeah,
that's
good
all
point.
we've seen.
Yeah, he does seem to be somewhat aware of his brother's flaws.
Yeah.
Though, I wonder how much, do you think he's aware, for example, that Thomas was always horribly jealous of him?
Probably not the full extent of it. No, I think he's aware. I mean, I think he's not dumb, and he's very observant. And I think he's aware that like he was favored. He was favored by his father. He was favored by people in general. I think he's aware of that, and he's aware that his brother is aware of that. But like, I think it's so interesting because like, young, confused, and easily led brother. I mean, it's not a nice depiction of Thomas, but it's not an angry, mean one either. It's kind of like this recognition that Thomas is all the stuff is out of his hands, and like it's not none of what's happening. Like he's basically been over the past 5 years been sitting in his tower watching his kingdom fall apart, and he even like we see in this no hint that he's actually placing some blame on his brother's shoulders.
Yeah, no, it seems to be pitying, if anything.
Yeah. And we continue to see, of course, that Flag's machinations have continued to ruin this poor nation. I love this part here. He had even heard some few daring wags had renamed his brother Foggy Tom the Constantly Bombed. The headman's axe had swung with regularity of a clock's pendulum since Thomas had ascended Delane's throne. Only this clock called out treason, sedition, treason, sedition, treason, sedition, with a regularity that would have been monotonous had it not been so frightening. I really love that word choices there, Matt. The treason, sedition, ticking clock thing is just so delightful.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to pause and appreciate, the way that King writes. Like that passage you just read, as far as the content goes, it could have just been, since Thomas had ascended to the throne, there had been daily executions under the pretense of treason and sedition. And that would have contained, the content and been shorter. Yeah. But as always, King takes the opportunity to paint like a very vivid, physical, visual, disturbing picture for us. The headsman's axe swinging over and over, the repetition of treason, sedition. It's the metaphor of a clock. It all adds up to just making you a lot more uncomfortable and feeling kind of the horror of it a lot more vividly.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but repetition is such a powerful tool in writing. When you really hit that beat multiple times, you're basically screaming to the reader, pay attention to this more, focus on this more, feel this more. And that's absolutely what it does here. I love it. It's like he does this all the time, and it's always delightful.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then King fast forwards across the 5 years Peter is imprisoned. We see that his beard grew long, save for where that white scar streaked across his cheek like a lightning bolt, which of course means that Stephen King did Harry Potter before Harry Potter. So eat your heart out, Harry Potter.
I wonder if they'll find any sneeches to use in the end of the book.
Could be. We do see that in his 3rd years of imprisonment, Pena resigns in disgust, and also we see that Dennis's father passes away. And in this, we see this moment where we once again talk about loyalty here. Brandon's final words to his son are, "But if the time comes to do your first master a service, Dennis, you mustn't hesitate." And then he says, "I have never," and then dies. And I've always assumed that Brandon's next words would have been something along the line of, "I've never believed that he was really guilty of the crime he was convicted of," or something like that,
Yeah, it makes sense. I agree. It was a very moving scene too. Once again, we're focusing so much on these brave common folk who orbit the royals, and they really get a lot of the best scenes.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is certainly a book about Peter, but especially this week, Peter's just stuck in his tower. He didn't do much. Mm-hmm. Dennis is really the hero of this week. He's definitely the MVP of these chapters. Totally. And it, like, the loyalty that he has here and the duty, which is another word we're going to be talking about a lot today, I think. He has a rough week. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's being thrust on Dennis here, and he does it all. And it's really remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's basically put, a huge amount of responsibilities put on this kid, and he does it. Yeah.
And then we also see that in the fourth year, the Stad family flees from around the city. We're seeing that a lot of the different families of Delane are doing the same thing, and they are perhaps starting to gather and get ready to take back the throne, put down the terrible king, and restore order to their kingdom. And Peter hears of this, and we have to talk about his reaction to this. I think this is important. Above all else, the kingdom must endure. There must be no revolt, no chaos. Wrongs must be put right, but by law, not by bows and slings and maces and clubs. Thomas, Levin, Valera, Roland, he himself, even Flag, paled insignificance next to that. There must be law. So we kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago, Matt, this idea that like sometimes systems need to be taken down from the outside, but this is kind of showing that, at least in Peter's mind, the most correct way to deal with this broken system is via the system itself.
Yeah. I think, it is really interesting because it fixes the stakes in our mind. The stakes are basically, are we going to be able to have a peaceful transfer of power, or is there going to be a civil war? And obviously, Peter thinks the prospect of civil war is horrifying. And then, as you pointed out, on the other kind of end of this, Pena is willing to go to the extent of having civil war to get the right king put on the throne. And I think, once again, it makes Peter seem so perfectly noble, because I think that given the choice between civil war and himself just remaining in prison, he would choose to remain in prison.
I think so. Yeah.
So
I agree. And I think it's, it's interesting that like this is Flag's plan, right? This is the fun, like winning for Flag is not Thomas remains on the throne forever. Like he doesn't care about that. Actually, Flag, everything he's been working towards has been working towards the idea that there is going to be civil war, that the kingdom is going to be thrown into so much chaos that the whole system is going to collapse in on itself. And I think he'd be very happy if the Stads charge into the city of Delane and take off the king's head and put someone else. Like this would be everything that he would want. So, I mean, it's not as if there's like three different conflicts going on here, that we have, we have Peter's noble goals versus Pena's realism versus Flag's evil machinations. I think it's interesting that Flag's machinations and Pena's realizing he might have to change his principles align in interesting ways.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
Which is not the first time that's happened either. Like Pena's loyalty to the system was co-opted by Flag to get Thomas in power, and now perhaps his loyalty, his disillusionment with the system is co-opted by Flag to get the chaos that he wants.
It is interesting to consider that even now, perhaps Pena isn't doing the right thing. He's trying to atone for the previous wrong that he did, but he's not actually doing the right thing.
Yeah. So, and then we get this point where King kind of explains this little gesture towards the storage room that he mentioned earlier in last week's reading. We learned that this is actually a room filled with 500,000 napkins, so many that the ones that Peter uses every day are just kind of thrown away after he uses them. So, of course, this means he could have stolen considerably more threads from these napkins had he known this, but he didn't know that. I do love the story of the napkins, though. We learn about Kyla the Good, this queen that was kind of put in charge after another bit of chaos that Flag made in the past, and understanding that people needed work and needed money. She just makes people make napkins, regardless of the need for them. She just makes thousands and thousands and thousands of napkins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, very fun. Even this historical tangent is very entertaining.
Yeah. So I think we need to take a step back here. We have almost 5 centuries ago, we have the machinations of Flag throwing the kingdom in the chaos. And then we have what seems like a genuinely good person, literally titled Kyla the Good, from which both Thomas and Peter eventually descend, doing an unnecessary but kind action that is within the power of the system she represents to right this wrong. And Pena continues this action kind of unbeknownst to him by the woman that is removing the royal crest from the napkins that are sent to Peter. Like, he could have just had her do this for like 200 napkins and then just rotated, right? And just cleaned them and rotated. But Pena knows, I keep saying this name wrong. I'm sorry. It's inevitable now.
Yep.
Pena knows that she needs work. And so he, instead of just rotating napkins, he has her continuously do it with new ones constantly throughout the years. And this is a tradition that has continued. And so, once again, we have these acts of kindness coming out on the back of horrible Flag misdeeds that are kind of the key to wrongs being righted.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great connection there. I don't think it jumped out to me as explicitly as you just laid it out. So that's really cool. And I see this sort of thing as the white, bringing things together, bringing people together, helping people who are in need, in contrast to, whatever it is that Flag represents here. It's interesting because there's been absolutely no mention of the Crimson King in this book.
No. I don't think in King's mind that character had anything to do with the story.
I think this is just Flag doing Flag things. I agree, actually.
Speaking of extremely loyal people, we move over to Dennis now, who we learn is now the butler to King Thomas. And we see through his eyes just how the poor young boy king is doing. And he's not good, Matt. We get this part. And sometimes, usually when he was drunk, Thomas would forbid Dennis to go home, but insist that he spent the night in Thomas's apartments instead. Dennis opposed, and rightly, that these were nights on which Thomas simply felt too lonely to bear his own solitary company. He would give long, besotted, rambling sermons on how difficult it was to be king, how he was trying to do the best job he could and be fair, and how everyone hated him for some reason or another just the same. Thomas often wept during these sermons, or laughed wildly at nothing, but usually he just fell asleep halfway through some mangled defense of one tax or another. So poor Thomas isn't doing well, and I think intentionally, this is a similar behavior to which Thomas witnessed on his father that disgusted him so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It is exactly the same pattern of behavior, and I think that's the guilt manifesting there.
Yeah. Guilt is like a sore, what the narrator says, which I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, I admit that a big part of me thought throughout the first half of this book that after Peter was imprisoned, the plot of the book would begin to shift substantially to concern Thomas's inner struggle to bring himself to a point where he could actually get rid of Flag himself. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be an interesting turn, and I actually still kind of do, honestly, because I'm a sucker for a good redemption story. And it's a very dramatic position that Thomas has been put in. But it just seems like Thomas is just wallowing. He's wallowed his whole kingship away, which is believable, of course. I'm just disappointed in him.
Yeah, understandable. There's still time. We still got a few dozen chapters left, Matt.
True.
So we learn that on a particular night, the guilt that he is experiencing drives him to kind of sleepwalk back to the hidden room with the eyes of the dragon. But this time, our old friend, loyal Dennis, follows him because his master is going somewhere and he should follow him. So he follows him. And it's interesting here, Matt, that we see Dennis is absolutely terrified. His king is wandering and sleepwalking and like speaking tongues almost, and he wants to leave, but it is his father's voice that spurs him on, his father telling him to do his first master a service. And then we get this line here: a voice deeper than either told him that the time for that service had come. And Dennis, a lowly servant boy who had changed the kingdom once by discovering a burning mouse, perhaps changed it again by holding his place in spite of the terror which froze his bones and pushed his heart into his throats. And I really love this, right? Because this idea of, service and loyalty to the one before, and where is this coming from, right? Because there's no direct logical, rational connection between following Thomas into a creepy passageway must be the chance to prove my loyalty to Peter, right? Like there's no like in scene reasoning behind that. It's some greater power. It's some greater thing that exists in King's universe, especially in the Dark Tower. And you know, I love the way when King writes this stuff, it could be these forces, these greater forces of the universe kind of pushing and pulling at the events within it, or it could just be some like deep internal instinct, some sixth sense that isn't really directed or controlled by any kind of greater power. It could be either of those things, but the result is the same no matter what.
Yeah. I think ultimately it boils down to he does a thing that he's terrified of doing, and that it's utterly crucial that he actually did that. So
Yeah. Speaking of greater powers, we have this moment here. 50 miles away, rolled into 5 blankets against the bitter cold and the roaring wind, Flag cried out in his sleep at the precise moment Dennis followed the king into the secret passageway. On a knoll not far distant, wolves howled in unison with a cry. The soldier sleeping nearest Flag on his left died instantly of a heart attack, dreaming that a great lion had come to gobble him up. The soldier sleeping on Flag's right woke up in the morning to discover he was blind. Worlds sometimes shudder and turn inside their axes, and this was such a time. Flag felt it, but did not grasp it. The salvation of all that is good is only this. At times of great import, evil beings sometimes fall strangely blind. When the king's magician awoke in the morning, he knew that he had a bad dream, probably from his own long-forgotten past, but he did not remember what it had been. Well, there we go.
Yeah. It's very cool.
It's the most literal and direct way for King to say evil destroys evil, which is kind of what's happening here. That like when evil things, good survives because evil beings sometimes fall strangely blind, and it's whether their own it's whether it's just the power of the light, the power of the white, the power of good that exists in this universe, or it is just their own overconfidence, their own ambition, their own smug sense of self-importance blinds them to these things. Who knows?
Yeah. I do think, you know, I was thinking a little bit about like Clotho and Lachesis and the higher powers that are hinted at existing in this greater universe, and the ways in which the Dark Tower kind of preserves itself. It's, you know, not that this has anything specifically to do with the Dark Tower, but I think the forces that preserve the Dark Tower are the forces of order, and so Flag is just going to always find himself at cross purposes with those. So
but it's interesting because like the idea that the soldiers on his left and right were affected by this, that the world shuddered in this moment. It's almost like the bad tried to fight back against the light here, and was rebuffed, and the side effect of that was these two people directly around the most central source of evil were either crippled or killed.
Yeah, it almost kind of has the feeling of like a minor beam quake or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So Thomas, we learn, is talking in his sleep, and he says enough for Dennis to understand what happened and what the young king must have witnessed. And like before, Matt, Dennis goes to Pena with what he has seen, which is interesting, no? Because I think there is a certain type of person that you know would have witnessed what Dennis witnessed and just swallowed it, just said, okay, that's not any of my concern. I'm a butler. It is not the greater dealings of kings and men are not my concern, and I'm just going to not tell anyone what I saw, which is exactly what Thomas himself did, right?
Yeah. I mean, Pena ends up serving the narrative role that I thought Thomas would serve, which is, you know, the guy who betrayed or lost faith in Peter and then regretted it and then tried to make his mistake right, which is also what Dennis is doing as well. You have both Pena and Dennis being these two characters who are trying to make amends, while, as you point out, Thomas does not try to make amends, and it ruins him.
Yeah. I do kind of want to spend some time talking about Dennis here, because I think there's really important things surrounding this concept of loyalty that we've been broadly talking about for the last couple weeks. Because I mean, like, the type of person Dennis is, it means when he finds things about Peter, he must tell someone, right? Like, so like the original thing that happened was he finds the smoking mouse, he finds the secret compartment, he finds this thing, and his duty, his loyalty says he must tell someone about this. And that's what gets Peter in all the trouble. And then it happens again, but he finds something and he must tell something. So like we said when it happened that he was, maybe a little disloyal to Peter when he reported on these things that he saw, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what he's reporting on here is kind of technically, disloyalty to his master as well, disloyalty to Thomas, the person he's serving right now. His duty is to this person, not to run off to a former judge and spill some information about some greater plot. So 2 acts of disloyalty back to back that serve, way different purposes.
Yeah, that's funny. I think I simply see it as doing what is right rather than being overly concerned with loyalty.
Sure.
Sometimes doing what's right requires disloyalty. I think, I made fun of Dennis previously for like immediately throwing his master under the bus, but more seriously, like he wasn't wrong to bring the mouse to his father, and his father wasn't wrong to bring the mouse to Pena. These were people who thought they were serving justice. They thought they were doing the right thing. Something was fishy and weird, and they followed up on it. And it did lead to a bad outcome, but that was because there was a bad actor pulling the strings and manipulating people. So, it is an interesting little cobweb of moral complexity, I guess. Because they do still feel that they owe restitution. They need to right the wrong that has been done. And it was done because of actions they took. I just don't actually think that they committed any particular crime.
No, I don't think they did either. And that's the fascinating thing about this book, because Dennis didn't and has not done anything wrong, but because of machinations within the system and evil within the system, good actions have been transformed to bad actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so he feels a duty, there's that word again, we're gonna get back to that once again, to right those actions, regardless of like he bears guilt for what he did. So does Pena bear guilt for what he did, even though they were just doing the right thing. Like, I don't know, like you're on a jury against the case of Peter. Like, the evidence is pretty damning, like it was a very good frame job. I don't fault people for convicting Peter in this case, but
right.
Like it just shows flaws in the system, but also that arguably those flaws are self-correcting eventually, right? Like this idea that like as long as there are good people within the system, the flaws will be corrected eventually.
Yeah, and I think maybe one thing that I haven't thought of yet is the idea that part of the requirement of being a good person is being able to admit that you've made a mistake, and then try to rectify it. Because I don't think Pena, or I certainly don't think Dennis made like a moral mistake. He made sort of a tactical mistake, right?
Sure.
But now the thing that sets him apart from Thomas, for example, is that he's going to fix it now. He's going to do everything he can to right the wrong that was done. Whereas I think Thomas is making much more of a what I would call a moral mistake. He knows exactly what Flag did, and he knows that his brother should be the king, and so that's why his guilt is even worse, actually.
Sure, yeah. I mean, let's kind of turn this attention towards Pena as well, who is also not doing well in the years after Peter's imprisonment. Like he's kind of completely disillusioned with everything. He's kind of watched this system that he loved and respected destroyed. I love the writing here. I'll read this. It's a little bit long, but I think it's worth it. Since the day Peter had been led to the top of the Needle, the chopping block in the plaza of the Needle had been stained a sinister, rusty color. Not even the hardest rain could wash it clean, and Pena and Pena thought he could detect that sinister red stain spreading out from the block, spreading out to cover the plaza, the market streets, the alleys. In his troubled dreams, Pena saw the rills of fresh blood washing in bright, accusing threads between the cobblestones and running down the gutters and streamlets. He saw the reddens of Castle Delane gleaming bloody in the sun. He saw the carp in the moat floating belly up, poisoned by the blood which poured out of the sewers in floods which rose from springs and the earth itself. He saw the blood rising everywhere, staining the fields and forest. In these unhappy dreams, even the sun began to look like a bloodshot, dying eye. So, yeah, he's obviously harboring a whole lot of guilt here.
Yeah, it's great. Very.
But like we've been talking about, like, from a certain point of view, you can't argue that he did just follow the evidence. Like, he went to where the evidence led him, and perhaps he rushed it a little bit, but it's interesting, right?
Yeah, what I was thinking about, actually, I was reminded of how back, especially in the earlier Dark Tower books, we would have conversations about how Roland was pretty fucked up by his home culture's concept of masculinity, how he had this very antiquated view of manhood and how it kind of made him into this hard man who was broken on the inside. At least in part by the expectations of his gender role, partly by the expectations of other roles that were thrust upon him, I think, like being a gunslinger and being the son of Stephen Deshane and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Pena kind of instantly turning on Peter because he shed these tears when he was upset at finding out about his father being poisoned. That strikes me as the very same sort of toxic masculinity thing to do that Pena has done here, and that's what he's trying to atone for, because I think he's well aware that his mistake was really judging the boy guilty the moment that he burst into tears, because it's like, well, that's not a manly thing to do, basically.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is definitely the thing that his guilt focuses on. That, like, I think he forgives himself for the believing of the evidence, but I think deep down he knows that he was so like willing to accept the way the evidence was pointing because of a presupposed conclusion he made the second Peter started crying. And I agree with you. I love that connection to the problems in Gilead, the problems that, like, this remains this really fascinating thing that I don't know if we talked about enough during the Dark Tower series, but this idea that, like, I think in your typical fantasy type story, Gilead would have been depicted as this perfect, wonderful place that Roland came from, and the tragedy that Roland had to endure. And part of what warps him is Camelot fell, right? Mm-hmm. That this perfect, wonderful, idealistic place collapsed, and now the world is nothing but cruelty. And the thing that I love about the Dark Tower is almost from the very beginning, King goes, no, actually, like, this place is broken. It's fundamentally broken, and it is people taking advantage of that brokenness that allows it to fall. And I think that's really fascinating, because I think there is a little bit of that in this story. I think the story is much more traditional fantasy fare than the Dark Tower was, but there is definitely some of that here.
Yeah. I don't think we can overlook what happened with Pena, which is this specific moment where he overreacted to the young man's emotional outburst. I think that's important.
Yeah. So we learn that Dennis is still terrified, especially of Flag, but Pena's cool interrogation techniques open him up a little bit. I love this idea that he's scared of Flag, but he keeps repeating this thing is like, he's gonna smell me. Flag's gonna smell me. I love the repetition of that. It's like this acknowledgement that he's barely human.
Yeah, he's this creature, and we're also introducing it around this point that, sort of like Voldemort, it's implied that he can hear if you say his name, which appears to actually be true, I guess. Mm-hmm. So,
and then we get this part, and I only mentioned this here to circle back around to it later, but they're going to decide in the morning what they're going to do. They're going to ride out and start to plan. But we get this: Pena's eyes gleamed. But before you go to bed, you'll mount to the attic and get the blanket you left with the boy against my specific and strict instructions. Which is, I mean, another little bit of disloyalty, right? Like this, we've talked about principles and morality versus loyalty, and this is another bit of Pena's butler didn't do what he was told and gave Dennis a blanket, which, hey, will matter later in the book. That his choice of doing that, despite his master's instructions, is going to matter later in the story. So I love how we're just layering these concepts on top of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is the butler did the right thing, even though it was disloyal. Yeah. And that's and in the end, that's going to be, that's more in service of the white, because people can obviously do horrible things because they were ordered to, right?
Yeah.
It's about having your own conscience and doing what you know is right.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say here that, like, it's not like Pena isn't saying get that blanket back because that little shit doesn't deserve to sleep with the blanket. It's because Pena's butler is an old man and he needs the blankets himself. Like, so the butler's decision to be disloyal here is a self-sacrificing level of principle. Is like, this guy's really cold and tired and he needs a blanket, despite the fact that I am old and I'm kind of putting myself at direct risk by removing one of my blankets to give to this kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I really do also love Pena wrestling with the weight of what he's considering doing here. We've kind of talked about this before, but he's the living embodiment of law and order, and yet he's about to ride out to a potential resistance and aid them in their resistance. We get this: such actions are the ones he was thinking about now, went against the grain of his whole life, but he would go ahead anyway, even if it killed him, which it just might. Peter had been falsely imprisoned. Delane's true king was not on the throne, but locked in a cold 2-room cell at the top of the Needle. And if it took lawless forces to put things right again, so it must be. So this is like basically in direct contradiction to the Peter said, where Peter basically said, the most important thing is the law. The law is above me. The law is above Thomas. The law is above Flagg. The law is above Pena. Like, we all pair in comparison to this thing. But in Pena's mind, the most important thing is that the wrong person is on the throne. And so I will supersede the law if it means that injustice is corrected, which is it's a difference, definitely a difference.
Yeah. We're setting up a very intense climax by, it's not even going to be so much just, is Peter going to make it out? It's going to be more of a race of, which one of these visions of how the kingdom is liberated is going to actually be carried out.
Yeah. So Pena sends Dennis back to the castle, back into danger. But before he makes his move, he basically needs the thing is, Pena is like ready to go full lawlessness, but he's like, something's up with that dollhouse. I love this idea that for 5 years, the napkins in the dollhouse has just been like nagging on Pena. And he's like, there has to be a reason he asked for a dollhouse and some napkins.
Yeah.
Perhaps Peter has a plan. And so before I make my move, before I officially throw my support behind a lawless band of rebels, I need to know what the king's plan is. It's great.
Yeah, I love it. And, him sending solely Dennis back to the castle to do all these important tasks. Basically everything hinges on Dennis, and it's just really surprising to me how unexpectedly important this character ended up being.
Yeah, I don't think that's something you would have predicted at all. Like, maybe you would have predicted that Ben Stodd plays this role, and he kind of does. Like, he's involved in the story as well. But yeah, I don't think Dennis himself. Like, we kind of said at the time that and this is why, right? Like, the reason why we spent so much time with Dennis and his father and their loyalty and their pride is because they become characters later that matter. But I just love, in the moment, it seems like this is just a digression, or whatever we're going to call that King Glossary term, where we're just diving into these butlers for no reason, but then we can kind of sneak around and use them now that we've established them later in the story.
Yeah.
So there's this moment here where, before he sends him off on his quest back to the castle, Pena asks Dennis a question, and the text makes a big deal about the seriousness of the question. It has like, now answer me truly. If you don't know, don't answer. Like, and then King doesn't tell us what the question is. We'll learn later, of course, that the question was, do you know when they take the fresh napkins to the Needle? Because he's basically saying, I want you to get a note to Peter. And so if you don't know when they take the napkins, you can't get the note to Peter. But it's almost like a dozen pages before we actually learn what this question is. And I'm just curious what your thoughts on were, like, why mask that information here, I wonder.
Yeah, after thinking about it, later on, King will make the point that the timing of when the message arrives means that Peter changes the time that he was planning to try his escape. And I think this is meant to connect with that moment. But that's all I got in terms of an answer.
I mean, the more I study King, the more I notice that we have these two almost contradictory things he does. We have the one where he goes ahead and tells you what's going to happen before it happens. And then we have the other where he'll just like stop, or he'll say, and then he said the 5 words that I couldn't believe, and then cut away, and we don't get to hear what those 5 words are. Like he likes to mix and match these two different techniques. And I mean, I think they're effective at doing different things, right? They're one, fills you in on the information so you can focus on the now and not wonder about what's going to happen. The other is very specifically trying to bait you to wonder, okay, well, what is the plan? What is going on here? And it's interesting the places in which he chooses to use one over the other.
Yeah. He definitely does the first one where he tells you what he's going to tell you a lot more often than he does this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I think, I'm aware that this is kind of a pet peeve of yours, and it's not a storytelling beat that I love. When he hides stuff from us.
To be clear, I don't mind it here because it's so minor and unimportant that I don't care.
I can't say that I've ever liked it or thought it was like a great choice.
I don't like there are moments. I'm reading King's book Joyland right now, which is like specifically meant to be like, it's under the Hard Case Crime publishing group, so it's like specifically meant to be this kind of like hard-boiled type story, and so he's using it a lot in that. That's kind of why I'm thinking about this right now, because he's using it a lot where he'll just end a conversation on a beat and not fill in that last bit of the beat and then backfill it later. And I mean, I don't mind it in this story at all, and I don't mind it here in Eyes of the Dragon we're talking about right now either. I think I kind of want to really spend some time on my own, like studying the moments where he chooses to do one over the other, and what he's probably going for, not in the specific instance, but more broadly in the moments where he chooses to hide the things, what he's going for.
Yeah, sure. That's a fair thing to look into.
Yeah. So as Pena moves north to the rebels, Dennis moves south back to the castle. Peter is still stuck up in his tower, making his rope. We learn that he's still 30 feet short from the ground, but he feels the strong urge to move as soon as possible. He's kind of seen the writing on the wall. Chaos and rebellion and collapse is inevitable, and he needs to move now. We learned that the reason he feels the strength of the urge, though, is he's been having this dream of Flag looking at some shining object and blowing on it, and discovering Peter and saying his name in this kind of shocked, surprised manner. And we'll talk more about this dream in a little bit, but it's a little interesting wrinkle, right?
Yeah, it certainly is this heretofore unknown power of Flag's to do something bad. That we're going to see more hints of this as we go.
Yeah, and I guess we'll kind of go ahead and preface the conversation we're going to be having later with, we learn that other people are having this dream, which immediately moves it from just being a dream to being something more and something specific. And
yes.
So
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. I also really love this line then. So he would trust to luck then, King's luck, which is another beat of the story of just showing like that true kings are just kind of better. This is very Tolkien. This is very old medieval time view of monarchistic figures that I think this book is slotting itself into intentionally. Definitely.
And because we like Peter, we're like, yeah, King's luck. Damn right.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
So, and thus we begin Dennis's arduous journey to infiltrate the castle and deliver a note to the true king, a journey that sees him eating disgusting turnips, pulling a reverse Shawshank, and most difficult of all, writing a letter. And this is, I really want to talk to you about this for a bit, because Dennis sees all this arduous, dangerous, difficult stuff as just doing his duty. And we've talked about, justice, loyalty, principles throughout the course of this entire book, but I don't think we've talked about this concept of duty Very much. And this is a motif that I think fits the story very well. Dennis goes through absolute hell for Peter here. He braves the evil eye of Flag and literal shit on this mission. And he just chalks it up as, this is my duty. Why? What is duty?
Well, I still am of two minds about this sort of thing, because I think in his mind, part of it is, the ordeal is penance for betraying Peter in the first place. Betraying is in quotes, because he was kind of doing what he thought was right. He's doing penance for the wrong that he did. But then I like the way you're framing it there, where it's just like he's doing the right thing. It's his duty to do the right thing. It doesn't matter that he betrayed Peter. This would still be his duty, even if he had nothing to do with what happened to Peter. Even if he'd been completely, out of town the week that Peter got put in jail. This would still be his duty in some sense.
And importantly, not his duty as a butler, because his duty as a butler would be to get Thomas his num-nums.
Yeah.
This is to Dennis his duty as a human being. I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree.
I really do love the scene where poor Dennis is like really struggling to make the letter. We'll talk about the letter itself here in a bit, but I love this bit where he uses up almost all the paper that he's given because he keeps messing up and starting over, which, hey, come to think of it, this is a Midworld story. I guess Delane doesn't suffer from the same like severe paper shortage that the other baronies do, namely Gilead itself.
Yeah. So my first thought was that maybe it's just that the people that this story mostly concerns have been royals, and maybe royals don't really feel the paper shortage because they have more of everything. But then I thought about it a little more, and I was like, well, maybe it's just Delane, in fact, has no shortage of paper, because the shortage of paper is specifically meant as a sign of the world moving on. And Delane is not moving on. Doesn't seem to be moving on.
Well, not in the same way. I mean, the kingdom is possibly about to collapse, but you are correct that the moving on that is occurring, across Midworld does not seem to be specifically happening here.
Yeah, it's not this supernatural moving on. And Stephen King understands how important paper is for passing along wisdom and knowledge. And so if you want to show a world that's dying slowly, you show a world with the severe paper shortage. I think the paper shortage is a symptom of the world moving on, not just a fact of Midworld, is my opinion.
Sure. No, I like that. I was mostly just being cheeky. I just think it's funny. I can't get over the fact that one time we were just like, hey, why don't they just like make tree? Just make more paper.
Just make more.
People really got on our case about that. You remember?
Yeah, I mean,
make more. Duh.
It is funny to me. Well, funny and also interesting to me, because if you take it seriously, you can even imagine that like the evil forces of the world were like intentionally sabotaging the creation of paper, because paper is exactly the thing that civilization rides upon. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, certainly even in the frame of this story where paper is not rare, there are multiple moments where like the key to everything is that characters have enough paper to write messages on.
It's true. Good point.
So Dennis is terrified of Flag smelling him, as we learn here. And Flag does indeed kind of sense him at one point, merely by Dennis thinking his name. But his overconfidence combined with a rare cold, a cold that he's only felt 4 times in like his infinite life. God, I wish that was me.
That's so funny that it's specifically 4 times. It's not. Yeah. I just love that.
Yeah, the specificity is really, really great there. So yeah, like he dismisses it because he's a little distracted, and I really love this part. He took the book from his lap, closed it, and set it on a side table. The surface of the table had been handsomely dressed in human skin, and then the book just kind of moves on from that. And you're like, what? Hold up.
Yeah,
a skin table.
Pretty sure it's a Lovecraft reference there. Although it's funny because it's the table that's human book. Skin, not the book. But well, yeah, that's horrifying.
It's just like it's the book is going like full into Flag the monster now. Like we don't even need to pretend he's a man anymore. He just has a skin table.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Handsomely dressed in human skin.
You know, I don't know if I'm just gonna go on a limb and say I don't know if a human skin table would be that aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, or functional, really. I mean, how many even just cow leather tables have you seen that really struck you as being functional?
Yeah, it just seems like you'd be really easy to damage.
Stain.
It would get stained. It would get scratched. You know, you put the book down wrong, and it like one of the sharp ends of your book scratches your table. Oh man.
Yeah, you can't really write on it because you'll just gouge into it.
Yeah.
Huh.
And if you didn't tan it right, I mean, the smell, like really, it's just impractical.
It's very impractical. And that's the only reason why I'm voting against the human skin table.
Yeah. Vote no on human skin table 2024.
Yeah.
Dennis reaches the castle, gets into the frozen over moat, and climbs into an old sewage pipe. We learn here that normally the place would be absolutely infested with rats, but thanks to Flag's ditching of some of the little bits of dragon sand he had left, the population of rats has been completely cleaned out. And it's really striking to me, Matt, like we've hit this beat so many times in the story, just how much King is pushing this idea of evil destroys itself. Like the machinations that Flag used to put himself into this position of power are now like one by one being used against him here.
It's a really good point because we know for a fact that Flag could have gotten rid of the poison in a smart and careful way by feeding it directly to a living creature. Just catch a few more mice, feed him to the mice. Yeah. But he was lazy and cowardly, and he just threw this worse than uranium super poison down the sink, basically.
Yeah.
And now it's coming to bite him in the ass.
Yep, it gives Dennis a clear path right up into the castle, so he's able to sneak in there and finds himself in the napkin room. He pins the message that he wrote to Peter on the Sunday evening napkin, and then he takes a nap.
Yep.
Still got it. Still got the jokes.
Still got the jokes.
I love this part here. We will leave him now with the first part of his job well and bravely accomplished. We will leave him turned up on his side, right hand curled under his right cheek, sleeping on a bed of royal napkins. And I would like to make a wish for you, reader, that your sleep this night be as sweet and blameless as his was all that day. Yeah.
Kind of confirms to me that we're supposed to think of this hard mission he went on as a kind of penance because of the connotation of blameless here, that he's having a blameless sleep. He's absolved. You know, he did this terribly hard thing, and now he is the burden is lifted off of him now. Yeah, I mean, we kind of, I made a Shawshank joke, but Andy Dufresne climbs through the shit pipe to get outside and to get, you know, freed and absolved of things, and I think Dennis does a very similar thing here, only in kind of a reverse way. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the story then cuts over to our good friend Ben Stodd, who, with the assistance of a woman named Naomi Rachel, who is I believe she's a farmer, is heading back to Castle Delane. Also, thanks to Frisky, the good sled dog, who's the best, goodest dog ever. And because it's a Stephen King story, surely nothing bad will ever happen to this good dog.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's always got to be a good dog that is totally fine in every King story.
This is the moment where they discuss the fact that they're having a similar dream, right? They're having the same dream that we learned that Peter did, that Flag looking into some bright glowing thing, whispering Peter's name in alarm. So what do you think's happening here, Matt? How are three people having the same dream?
I mean, I think Flag is about to do some kind of dark ritual to, I don't know, either find or kill Peter. And it's just so evil and terrible and magical that all the sensitive people around the lands or maybe just all the people who are involved in it are seeing visions of it. Yeah, but that's interesting, right? Because it's not like he's mid evil ritual, and like it's, from what we've seen of Flag, he's not even doing anything, and like he's just chilling with a book with his skin table. He's not doing nothing. He's not aware. He's not even aware that Peter is a thing to be concerned about right now.
I mean, I think we can call back to Insomnia once again and here and say that like the forces of the universe that these books inhabit seem to be self-correcting in a lot of ways, so that if Flag is going to be doing this incredibly powerful evil thing, the scales want to right themselves a little bit, and so visions of this thing are sent into the past to give people warning before like let's use the words from Insomnia, purpose and random, but like the purpose tries to realign things to be purposeful again, and these visions could just be a part of that. I mean, it could be part like and of course we have our old friend Mr. White, the interfering indirectly and directly in different things. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of avenues for why this thing would be happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do find it a little interesting that the two characters are very not entirely like ho hum, but are just like totally chill about the fact that they're having identical dreams. I guess when you live in this world, you're just like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, I think they live in a world where the idea of the touch is already a thing that is understood. Not that, I mean, the touch hasn't been mentioned in this book specifically, but it just seems like in Midworld, the idea of like, oh yeah, Fred's psychic is just kind of accepted.
Good old Fred.
But speaking of this pair of characters, I'm just 100% confident that the book is going to end with Ben Stodd and Naomi Rachel being married and shacking up. That
sounds about right. Sounds about right. I want to put something to you here, and I want you to pay attention to it as we go through our books. But I do think the thing I've noticed, King does not usually allow his protagonist to like get the girl. It's actually very rare that the protagonist gets the love interest. The couples in Stephen King stories are almost always secondary characters.
Yeah. Eddie and Susanna, it's which very very important characters, but not Roland. I think he really likes his tragic protagonist actually.
Yep. So chapter 96 is we haven't been calling out all the chapter names because there's way too many of them, but chapter 96 is this very short, like half a page long kind of tone setting chapter as King once again kind of zooms out from the individual character beats to a wider Delane beat of all the denizens of the city seeing the coming storm, both figuratively and literally here, and being broadly aware that something terrible is going to happen. And this strikes me as something very specific to early King. I think he did this a lot in his younger years. At Salem's Lot is one of the stories that I think of when I think of this thing where you just kind of we're talking and dealing with these character beats, and then we just kind of zoom out to look around the town. And he does it again here, and I really love it.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
This part here, animals were skittish, people were nervous, wise mead house keepers would not open their doors. They had observed the falling mercury in their barometric glasses, and long experience had taught them that low air pressure makes men quick to fight. Delane battened down for the coming storm, and everyone waited. So fucking good. So fucking good.
Just ratcheting up that tension.
Yep. We then cut back to Ben and Naomi, who make for the Pena farm, and they make it in record time thanks to good old Frisky. Good old Frisky. I honestly don't remember if anything bad happens to the dog, Matt, so I'm not I'm not like setting you up for anything. I don't remember.
Well, I mean, I just know that it's not a Midworld book unless there's a weirdly intelligent dog-like animal saving the day in some way.
That's true. They both feel really helpless and unsure what to do next, but they figure out they can find Dennis because our good boy Frisky rises to the challenge. He's also a scent dog, and he can track Dennis based on his scent. Based on the scent, Matt, from the blanket that Butler Arlen gave him that Pena specifically told him not to, which we kind of already talked about, but that's the important moment here, right? This pays off, that a moment of quote-unquote disloyalty that actually pays off in some way, because it was the correct thing to do, his duty to care, his duty as a human being to look after other human beings.
Yeah, it was of the white.
Yeah. And this is an important, speaking of loyalty and duty and things, this is an important thing I want to talk to you about, because we get this, they decided they're going to go off with Frisky, and Ben asks, what about the rest of your team? I should open the shed over there, she pointed at it, and leave my bedroll in it. If I show them where it is and then free them, they'll be able to forage for their own food, rabbits and such, and they'll also know where to come to shelter. They won't follow us? Not if they're told not to. So that is loyalty that the dogs are having, and it's blind loyalty that the dogs are having. And I return us once again to our God and dog conversation from the very beginning of the book, that the difference between a good person and a bad person is God and dog. And not saying that dogs aren't great animals, and we love them very much, and we do, but dogs are not people, and dogs will do what they're told if they're trained to do what they're told. They will not question. They will not, do the quote unquote right thing. If the right thing comes to them, they will do what they're told. So here we have a moment. What will the rest of the team do? If they're told not to come, they will not do it because they are dogs, and that's what dogs do. But gods, men, kings do what is right. And I think that's, this is like, I never detected this on my first read of this book at all, but it's here and it's everywhere. And I love it so fucking much.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the dogs throughout this part here, like these are, awesome, extremely useful dogs. Yeah. These are sled dogs. They're doing the Lord's work here. They're ferrying our heroes to and fro. But you're absolutely right that the text takes the time to specifically cast dogs as basically obedient creatures who aren't sitting there making moral decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right here, we have what Sasha said to Peter back in the dogs are great pets because they're loyal. But if a pet is all a man is, he is a bad man, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's damn.
It's so good, right? It's so fucking good. Yeah. I love it so much.
I mean, it makes it really funny that I think I was joking at the time, but I was so harsh on the Butler family for betraying Peter. But it's like, yeah, well, I mean, it's complicated, right? It's not so simple. It's not so simple as like, well, they shouldn't have betrayed. It's like, well, what if he had been a murderer?
Right. Yeah.
So
it's very easy to say that it was an act of betrayal when we know for sure that he was being framed. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't fault you for any of that. I think there is this certain amount of anguish at watching the amazing Peter be completely taken down by this whole thing.
Yeah.
So back with Peter himself, who is preparing his final night in the cell. He's decided that this night will be the night that he escapes. One way or another, he's going to do it. He's either going to die in the attempt or make it out. That is, of course, until he discovers Dennis's note, which you talked about earlier, that Dennis's note gets to him just on time, which basically makes him say, okay, I need to wait. There's other people doing things. There's other movements happening, and I need to wait to see if I can coordinate with them. And I love the note, Matt. And this is a question I have for you as the audiobook reader, because this note has just a shit ton of misspellings in it. They're everywhere. And I'm curious if any of that translated via the audiobook. I did listen to, but I can't say for sure because I knew what all the misspellings were. Did any of that come through in the audio to you? Just like how riddled with misspellings this thing is?
Well, the way that the audiobook reader does the character of Dennis overall is to have like a very rural English accent.
Sure.
In like that very specific way that even I, as an American, recognize it as being, rural and low class and whatever. Or at least that's how I've been trained by movies. Yeah, I mean, to be blunt, I have no idea if that's actually accurate, but that's what I believe based on movies.
Our entire image of the world is through the films we've watched.
Yeah, right. And
kids
so
of the 90s. My God.
Yes, I assume that it's perfectly accurate. But so as he reads the letter, it's like really kind of caricatured in terms of the accent, and it comes across as being like entirely earnest and obviously not like proper English,
Sure.
But
okay.
But that so and then I think at the end of the letter he says something like, Peter didn't make much of the spelling errors or something like that. And then I was
yeah.
like, okay, so like the letter just must have been very, very poorly written and had a lot of spelling errors. And I got it. I didn't miss anything there, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think the important thing is like the spelling errors are not here to like to make a jest like at Dennis, to insult him, to demean him. Like I don't think we're meant to kind of laugh at, oh, look at this stupid guy, he doesn't know how to spell things. I think it kind of demonstrates we're kind of told the amount of work he put into the letter, but we can see this was not an easy task for him. He's not as literate and able to write as everyone else in the kingdom is, or at least some of the people we know. He's educated in some ways, but not in all of the ways. And I think it shows, I think it personalizes it, and it shows his effort here. He wants to get his point across. He wants to communicate, and he's struggling to do it, and he does it anyway. I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I agree.
An important thing in here that Peter kind of briefly remarks on, but then moves on, is in just this last week, I found out that you did not murder your father, Roland the Good. I know who did, and Thomas knows as well. So in the note, this is the first time that we have Peter learn that his brother is aware of who actually killed his father, which is new information for Peter. Like we said, Peter at the point in this chapter, like, bore no ill will towards his brother, but perhaps this new information will change his opinion of his brother a little bit here.
Perhaps change the course of action that he chooses to take.
Yeah.
That's interesting though. Yeah,
sure. So Peter, of course, does have something with which to write on. He has good old Valera's note. And thanks to Valera, he also has some ink, because he learns that blood makes a pretty good ink. So Peter drags the sharp end of a locket across his wrist, which, I don't know, man. There's got to be like a better way to get blood for your writing than slicing your wrist open. Oof.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
I mean, he didn't go a long ways, so he'll be okay. But jeez, dude. Yeah. And that's where the story leaves for this week, Matt. We leave with Peter working on his note and planning to deliver his response to Dennis.
Yeah. I once again, even the very existence of Valera's note, which provides him his writing materials, is yet again evil destroying itself, because Valera's note is only there in the first place because of Flag. Although in this case, the justice will come very late for Valera.
Yeah, justice is not perfect in this system for sure. That's very delayed justice, to be sure.
Yeah.
If he gets it at all. But we will find out next week, Matt, because next week we finish the book. This is it. We're here already. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to it. I really want to know how everything shakes out, because I'm now very invested in several of these characters, and I kind of think I know the shape of the overall conclusion, honestly. But that doesn't mean I know how every character's fate is going to turn out. Like,
sure,
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Dennis were to die tragically, for example. I don't want him to, obviously, but that's just kind of the sort of thing I can see happening.
So question, we've got, I think, probably 70, 74, 75 pages left in the novel. Does it feel like there's a lot left to do before the end, in your opinion? Like, it seems like there's a lot we got to wrap up before this thing's over. We don't have a whole lot of room to do it in.
Yeah, I guess I can see certain avenues where things could happen more quickly, if certain people have conversations with certain specific people, and those people, like one way this could play out is that there could be a big war, and then it's like, okay, and then we need to have Game of Thrones just kind of inserted into the novel. But it's like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a bunch of intense, dramatic, one-on-one sort of interactions, actually.
Sweet. Well, we will find out next week.
We will.
All right, Matt, let's move on to our discussion questions section. The question we asked last week was, what is your favorite prison break in storytelling? Doesn't have to be successful. And we actually got a lot of responses for this one. I was very happy with the number of responses. There's a lot of prison breaks in stories, and you guys really like them. So thank you for all the responses.
Awesome. So P Defender 716 says their favorite is Con Air. It's only if they say it's only if those movies. Sorry, they say it's one of those movies that if I see it on TV, I'll watch it no matter what part it's at.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
God, Nick Cage, my hero.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in forever.
Me neither. It's a good movie though. Who was the bad guy in that movie? John Malkovich.
Right? John Malkovich is one of the. Isn't that funny looking guy also in the movie?
Yes, Matt. That funny looking guy is in the movie. I have no idea who the fuck you're talking about, but yeah. Yes.
You do know I'm talking about that. Hold on. you read yours while
I mean, like, there's a lot of people in this movie, so I don't like. Are you talking about Steve Buscemi?
Yes.
That's mean. That's really mean to Steve.
It's because they call him that in Fargo, and that's the joke. The joke is they keep calling him. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of funny looking. They do it over and over. That's
all right. That's fair. That's fair. Next we have Felidao, who says, for the discussion question, I thought of a specific story arc in the fanfic Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. Oh, here we go again, Matt. It's your book again. Where, and I won't spoil things too badly for anyone who hasn't read it, a certain person is broken out of Azkaban. Eliezer Yudkowsky, did I say his right name?
Yeah.
His name right, Matt?
Close enough.
Who wrote this fic remains mostly faithful to Rowling's lore regarding the Potterverse, but he has a talent for seriously considering the consequences of various magical MacGuffins, and then ramping up all the implications to 11. Hence, this Azkaban prison break involves time traveling and time turner espionage, an absolutely ferocious wizard's duel, some terrifying and cathartic episodes with Yudkowsky's upgraded version of Dementors, and an incident with a transfigured rocket which incorporates an amusing aside about Aristotelian versus Newtonian physics.
Uh-huh.
Jesus. Look, I'm so glad y'all love this book, Matt. This is one of your favorite web serials ever. It's great. I will never ever read this thing ever.
The Azkaban prison break is in fact the best part of the whole webfic. So
that's cool.
So it's appropriate that this be pulled out. Pear Jane says this is going to seem so yawningly trite, but I do have to go with Andy Dufresne for several reasons. Number one, I read and reread the story so often that by the time the movie came out, I was reciting the dialogue with a movie I'd never seen before. That's great. My mom side-eyed me like she was suddenly realizing something about me she'd never known before. And number two, when Siskel and Ebert reviewed it, they gave it 2 enthusiastic thumbs up, and Siskel ended the segment by saying, I think folks will be surprised by the ending of this one. I didn't see it coming, thereby allowing me to feel read the book superiority over Siskel for the first and only time in my life.
Those are great.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Cy Scott 19 says, I have to agree with Pear Jane on this one and go with Shawshank. I especially enjoy the movie version for a single line when Andy is talking to Red about his dreams of a life in how do you pronounce this Spanish word? Zutenejo. I'm usually pretty good with
Zihatwanejo.
I'm usually pretty good with the Spanish language, but this is rough for me. Red, scared for his friend's mental state, tells him he needs to stop fixating on his vision, saying, that's just shitty pipe dreams. Given the conclusion, and I'm trying really hard not to spoil for anyone, that's the most perfect setup line in the history of cinema. Fuck, that's really good.
I never thought about, oh my God, that's a shitty pipe.
That's so good.
You broke me.
Fuck. How did I never put that together?
Oh
that's very good.
This is my origin story right here.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cy Scott 19. Oi the Bumbler 4 says, my favorite jailbreak is Shawshank, of course. A close second is Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. It was so shocking the first few times I watched it. His ruthlessness and ingenuity make him one of my favorite characters. Yeah, that's just a perfect piece of film, isn't it?
It is. Good old Ahop, which is which was what Anthony's friends call him.
Yeah.
Good old Sir Ahop.
Sir Ahop, and just the slow burn tension of the whole thing, where you're just like, so much of that scene, you're just like looking at people's faces as they watch elevator dials move up and down. You know. Yeah,
you switched back to being serious after I made the greatest Ahop joke ever. I'm really impressed with you.
I mean, we're all being totally serious. Anyway,
Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says, obviously Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption. Brilliant. But I have to mention two others. The first is Toy Story 3. I love this movie and unabashedly sob every time I watch it. The prison scene and escape sequence gives nods to so many prison sequences, things the kids don't get, but the adults in the room love, which is really just the whole modus operandi of Pixar, isn't it?
That's true.
Second, the Fratelli escape sequence at the beginning of The Goonies. The score during the scene is absolutely perfect, and I know every beat of that film sequence by heart. Brief introductions of all the characters we've soon to meet, a maniacally cackling Joey Pants, and the indelible Anne Ramsey. When my baby brother visited the Oregon Film Museum on a cross-country trip, he eagerly sent me pictures of Jake Fratelli's cell. If I ever go to Oregon, that'll be my first stop.
That's fun. I forgot that was even in that movie, but
yeah, what's your opinion on The Goonies? How do you feel about The Goonies?
I literally haven't seen it since I was a child, so
yeah.
It probably needs to be updated. I don't know.
I would definitely watch it when I was a kid, but I think I have very little emotional investment in that film.
Yeah, I agree. Wasn't one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, but I definitely watched it a bunch of times. So
yes.
Lord of Chains says, has to be from The Count of Monte Cristo. Edmond Dantes is falsely accused of treason and imprisoned in the Chateau d'If for 14 years. During that time, he meets fellow prisoner Abbe Faria when he tunnels into Dante's cell, realizing he's been tunneling in the wrong direction for years. They spend the next 7 years digging an escape tunnel in the other direction, while Faria educates Dantes on many subjects, including swordsmanship. However, this escape falls into the category Matt mentioned, where the complex plan gets thrown out the window in favor of something completely different when the tunnel collapses. When the tunnel collapse kills Faria, Dantes is able to switch himself out for Faria's body and gets carried out and thrown into the ocean by the guards.
Count of Monte Cristo is so fucking good, man.
It is. Is that also what is that what happens in the novel? Because I've only ever seen the movie with
Jim Caviezel
and Guy Pearce and so forth, and I was just wondering if that's the same.
Yep, that is how it happens in the movie.
Okay, cool.
I mean, the book. Sorry, cool. The movie's good. It's not great, but it's very good, and I have very fond memories of it. I don't know why. Every time I see 14 years in the Chateau d'If, I think of the line of the movie where Edmond Dantes, has found his lost love, and she's like, "Where have you been?" And he goes, 14 years in the Chateau d'If. And her response is, "Did you suffer?" And he looks at her like she's the dumbest human being on the planet. Did you suffer?
Yeah, there's just great acting all throughout that movie.
That's so good.
That's the main great part about it. Just all the scenes between him and Guy Pearce are just gold.
Yeah. Just Stand 8460 also picks The Count of Monte Cristo, but as a number 2, he picks Paul Sheldon's escape in Misery, says it is nothing short of intense. Although he is not actually in a prison in the traditional sense, he is still held against his will. I don't know if I felt the level of gripping suspense from any other book. Annie Wilkes was so terrifyingly sadistic and unpredictable. Kathy Bates did a great job in the adaptation, but reading it alone in my bed at night made it a much more visceral experience. I literally did not know if Paul would ever escape, and if he did, I could never be sure how he'd pull it off, since his attempts were thwarted every single time. And then there's some spoilers that you haven't read the book, so
I'm not going to read them.
Yeah, but I agree, that's such a wonderfully tense scene, and I think one of the good things the movie does is capture a lot of that tension in those scenes. God, it's a great movie.
Yeah, we talked about how perfect that movie is.
Yeah.
When we did our other levels of the tower on it, and how just like the tiniest little things actually become so consequential because the filmmaking is so tight, actually.
Yep.
All right, Emperor Fry the Solid says, favorite prison break's got to be Cool Hand Luke. A little bit for the escape itself. His second attempt includes leaving cayenne pepper on his trail to cause the bloodhound some agony. Brilliant, but mostly because of the spirit of his escape. Luke cannot submit to corrupt authority, and his escapes are such a natural consequence of his inner character that it really does remind me at a point you pulled out about Peter. He doesn't care what's happened to himself per se, more so that it happened to anyone. Great movie.
Great movie. Not at all sad. Not at all.
I haven't actually seen Cool Hand Luke.
Oh, okay. Well, pretend I didn't say that.
I mean, I'll just choose to not be sure whether you were being sarcastic or not, and then it'll be totally ambiguous.
That's great. I love it.
Yep.
Next up, we have Unshaved Testicle. My continued favorite Reddit name. My favorite Prison Break is from Watership Down, which I read last summer, and it was immediately catapulted to my top 5 books ever, and has inched its way to number 2, Sorry, Lord of the Flies and The Great Gatsby, with only our buddy Stephen King's Wizard and Glass ahead of it, but who knows for how long. To give a brief summary of the Prison Break and Watership Down without spoiling it too much, one of the more fan-favorite rabbits, Bigwig, has infiltrated a nearby warren that already has an authoritarian reputation. He knows what he has to do going in, but the things he sees in the warren causes the tension to rise exponentially. There is a chase, a confrontation with some pretty badass dialogue, a bird, and a fight, and another escape. That is one of those books that I really need to read. Seriously. And the fact that I haven't read it yet annoys me.
Yeah, me too. I haven't read it, but I understand that it is Redwall for grown-ups, which must be quite a thing because Redwall is already almost for grown-ups.
Basically, yeah. All
right. Green Mountain Bot says, my favorite Prison Break by far is Bilbo freeing the dwarves from the Wood Elves. Narratively, it allows the dwarves to proceed on their quest. It gives the elves impetus to be present at the story's climax, and it allows Smaug to figure out where the invisible thief came from, leading directly to his death. Thematically, it shows Bilbo growing into the fullness of character that Gandalf saw in him from the start, highlighting the idea that we are capable of more than we give ourselves credit for. It emphasizes themes like greed, the elves, obstinacy, the dwarves, and resourcefulness, Bilbo. In showing trade with Lake Town and beyond, it helps bring the world to life by hinting at all the activity that must be happening off-page to make such an escape even possible, while setting up a contrast with what was lost when Smaug destroyed Dale and seized Erebor. But most importantly, it is so goddamn fun. Tense at times, but in the most enjoyable sense. If after this you didn't love The Hobbit, of whom there is a lot more than you expect, and a deal more than he has any idea himself, I can only conclude you're an inhuman monster who is simply incapable of such emotion.
What a good book, that Hobbit.
Yeah.
If there weren't already so many just absolutely wonderful podcasts about Tolkien and his works, I would say we should do them someday, but there's so many good ones out there already.
Yeah. I mean, I am a huge lover of Tolkien, but it's almost the kind of thing where you could almost do like, a podcast for every like 2 pages and just dig.
Yeah, you really could.
That's the way that he wrote was so dense. I don't
Very
know.
dense. Yeah.
I don't know if that's quite the right word, but you know what I mean.
I think the Prancing Pony podcast, which if you're looking for a Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit / Middle Earth podcast, the Prancing Pony, definitely one of the best ones out there. They don't quite do every pages, but they're very, very, I think they do like a chapter an episode. And
cool.
Some of those chapters aren't that long. So
yeah. Makes sense.
Great. All right. Next up, we have Shortstop 88 says, for favorite Prison Break, my first idea came from Pirates of the Caribbean, which has its fair share of prison breaks, and probably the best to be the main cast escape from the cannibal island in Dead Man's Chest. However, I would say the prison break I enjoy most was from the Pirate Series 1. Damn it! How come I always get these ones?
I don't know, but it's magic.
From the Pirate Series One Piece. In that story, the main character breaks into the most secure prison in the world to rescue a family member. The prison, called Impel Down, exists almost entirely underwater, with each floor of the prison holding stronger criminals the furthest down into the depths you go. Much of the design of the prison actually alludes to Dante's Inferno. The story spent during the prison break is really fun, and the main character ends up encountering many of the antagonists he had previously defeated earlier in the story while making his way down. Plus, this is a prison break-in as opposed to the normal prison breakout. And if I know anything about anime, I bet that one prison break sequence is like 47 episodes long.
Almost certainly, Scott. I have so many people telling me that I should watch One Piece, by the way.
Isn't it literally like 3,000 episodes long? Like, that's just no way that's ever going to happen, Matt.
Yeah, I think it may indeed be. But maybe if I ever, get sent to prison, I can watch it during my downtime, and then I can use it as inspiration to escape.
Sure, Matt.
I mean, that's the only way I can imagine myself having that much free time, honestly. So anyway, Squatch42 says, my favorite Prison Break movie is Prison Break. It's a bit on the nose, but season 1 of Prison Break is one of my favorite single seasons of television. Genius engineer gets himself arrested to be sent to prison so he can break his little brother out of prison. And he has one heck of a detailed and complicated plan that has very little realism to it, but it's satisfying to watch how those intricate little pieces fall into place. And it has a wonderful ensemble cast of villains and heroes on both sides of the bars. As a show, it definitely peaked with season 1, but it's a great prison break.
Yeah, I dated a girl when the show was playing that absolutely loved it. I never watched it myself. I do think it's one of those hilarious shows where like they didn't know what to do after this first season. Like no, I guess mild spoiler. I've never seen the show, but like I know the first season ends with a prison break. Like it's called Prison Break. So they break out of the prison at the end of the first season, and then it's like shit. The show's popular and they want more seasons. What do we do now?
Just gotta put him back in prison and then he's got to break out again.
And I think season 2 is breaking into the prison this time. They've got to break. Okay. They got to break in. It's definitely one of those like I feel like there's so many like post Lost shows that were like high concept shows that everyone was greenlighting and they just didn't think through the implication of like what do we do if this has to go for more than 1 year?
Doesn't matter. We'll just make it up as we go along, like Lost. Yep. Yeah.
I'm gonna fight you.
You know I'm right.
Nope. Dark Beer Rules says The Great Escape from 1963. Yes, they made movies that long ago. Steve McQueen, James Garner, James Coburn, and a bunch of other badass WW2 prisoners of war escape from those stinking Nazis. No, not the ones that populate the crazy right-wing militia patriot groups here in the U.S. I'm talking about the real McCoy, Hitler's Nazis. Our heroes, U.S. servicemen in the movie, but mostly British in the true story the movie was based on, planned and executed a tunnel escape from a stalag. The fact that most of them got caught later just gave them an opportunity to flip off the Nazis as they were getting shot. Yeah. That is another incredibly sad movie.
Yeah.
Where they almost all get captured again.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to, if nobody was going to mention that one, I was going to mention that like, this is the one I always think about. And it's actually specifically because it's this movie that has this like fun tone where there, that there's the theme that's like whistled, which I'm not going to subject you to right now, but like it's the theme song and the overall tone of the movie is like this lighthearted, exciting prison break tone. And then it ends with, they escape from the prison and then they're all captured and shot in a field and you're like shit,
bummer.
And I think that's what they're going for with the movie though, is to like trick you into feeling like and then it was all okay, and then it's like no, it was not all okay. So many people died in this stupid war.
But at least Steve McQueen got to jump that fence in a motorcycle, which is one of the most famous scenes ever.
That's true. At least that got to happen.
So fucking cool.
It is.
So fucking cool.
All right. Gerardo says there are so many good stories with prison breaks. The first to come to mind is obviously The Shawshank Redemption. I also thought of The Count of Monte Cristo, another favorite. That reminded me of Escaping by Water and thus Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood, the actor that is the very image of old, tall, and ugly Roland Deschain. Therefore, it's Ka that the answer is Escape from Alcatraz.
All right, we'll take it.
Yeah, I have seen that movie and I enjoy that movie.
Me too. Walking Dude 22 says my all-time favorite is about breaking into a prison, not breaking out. That movie is the Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery classic The Rock. Terrorists seize Alcatraz and blackmail the U.S. government with the release of top-secret classified information under a threat of VX rockets. Both Cage and Connery have excellent moments, and their chemistry on screen works surprisingly well. I guess Jerry Bruckheimer knows what he's doing. Yeah, and Michael Bay. That's a great fucking movie.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a quotable movie.
Yep.
Everything Nick Cage says in that movie is quotable.
Yep. He's fucking Stanley Goodspeed is the weirdest character in the world. I love the weird shit that Nick Cage brings to what otherwise would have been just like a fairly normal, milquetoast action hero guy.
Just imagine like some other random good looking Hollywood guy playing that character and how boring and just nothing that movie would be.
Yeah. I still think the shower scene in that movie, where the Navy SEALs break into the shower and like that is one of the most that fucked me up.
Yeah.
That's a horrifying scene. It's done so well.
Yeah, it's so intense. I agree. Yeah, I feel the same. All right. Complicated 9519 says, I'm going to cheat here a bit for my discussion question and say Jurassic Park is my favorite Prison Break movie. You might ask yourself, well, Complicated, how is that a prison break? Well, let me ask you, everyone, what is a prison but just somewhere you are trapped and isolated from the real world? In Jurassic Park, the main characters become trapped on an island teeming full of dinosaurs that break free. Brought to the island by the warden, John Hammond, Alan Grant and co. must escape the island or face death. See,
you know what? I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
And see, I thought you were going to go a different direction and say the protagonists of the movie have to break out of their prisons.
Yeah, I mean, it is a dinosaur prison break, almost literally. Yeah.
The T-Rex smashes through those prison wires.
Yeah.
And frees himself, and it's a happy ending for him, actually. I mean.
Well, is it
in the book in the movie anyway?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess they're supposed to all just die, but they don't. So
well, life finds a way.
They're supposed to be lysine dependent and all die, but then they don't because there's more stories.
That is really, really funny. You mentioned that how the lysine contingency thing just completely goes away in all the other movies.
It didn't work.
Not even mentioned. Yeah.
Life found a way somehow.
Yeah. Right.
At least in the original, they tried to explain about the amphibian DNA spontaneously changing sex to explain how the dinosaurs are reproducing, but why they didn't die from lysine wasn't it like they did try to offer an explanation. They said they were just eating plants high in lysine, which is the most boring explanation ever.
I definitely in the book, I don't even remember it being in the movie, but in the book it was just explained that the animals were eating plants that had lysine. But
I think that's in the movie too. It's like a one throwaway line.
Okay.
But that's I guess that's good adaptation. Good job, dinosaurs.
I mean, the thing that's unbelievable is that all of the dinosaurs would have figured that out, right?
Yeah. There would have been a lot of dead dinosaurs before someone said, hey, I ate this and didn't die.
Right.
We should eat more of this.
I mean, I can believe the raptors sort of figuring something like that out because they're a social species. But you think Triceratops is going to figure whatever.
Well, the raptors don't even need to because the raptors are just eating the Vegisauruses that are eating the lysine.
Oh, good point.
So
and the humans who are probably full of lysine.
Yeah, but delicious lysine. And
wait,
this is the most amount of times I've said the word lysine in my entire life.
And how do you?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what lysine is. I watched a movie where they said the word a lot.
It's a protein.
Sure.
Or it's an amino acid. I mean,
great.
But isn't it in flesh? And so how do you deny it to a species that eats meat? Wow, we've talked about Jurassic Park for a long time.
Jurassic Park, great prison break movie.
Yeah, great prison break movie.
We have next Steve D, who says favorite prison break is a song called Rusty Cage by Soundgarden. Some of the greatest opening lyrics in rock and roll history. Steve shares them here. You wired me awake and hit me with a hand of broken nails. You tied my lead and pulled my chain to watch my blood begin to boil. But I'm going to break my rusty cage and run. The song is loud and mean and strange. Frustration is pouring out of Chris Cornell's voice in the song, and he's going to break out of his cage if he has to chew through the rusted metal. A song that could only be uniquely remade by the Johnny Cash, the Man in Black.
Johnny Cash is everything.
I don't know if I've ever heard the Soundgarden version of the song. I don't know. I think I've only heard the Johnny Cash.
Yeah, I kind of want to listen to it now just to see. I know I've heard a lot of Soundgarden, but maybe not this song. I don't remember it. Anyway, I'll check it out. I will check it out. Steve L says, I'd be shocked if most or all of us here don't respond with Shawshank Redemption. It's simply the best of the best prison break stories. The other one I thought of was Orange is the New Black. When the Rosa stole the van and on the way escaping ran over V, the bad girl in the group who had also escaped. Great ending to the season.
Did you ever watch that show?
No.
I did. I watched the whole thing. It was pretty good.
Okay. That sounds like a funny thing to happen.
It was very, very shocking. Sorry to spoil Orange is the New Black for people. I don't think anyone cares anymore.
Yeah.
Last, we have Jennifer D, who says, my favorite prison break in a movie is when smoking hot Johnny Depp and his hood cohorts are set free in the movie Crybaby. All it takes is for his square girlfriend's grandmother to seduce the judge while the group sings a snappy Please Mr. Jailer montage, during which Tracy Lords wriggles suggestively in a pencil skirt. Boom. Freedom. So many of my confused adolescent fantasies were stoked by that one scene. I still love a bad boy. I haven't seen that movie in forever.
This is another movie I haven't seen, I guess.
It's been a long time for me. I don't even remember why I saw it. I think the first time someone put it on, I rolled my eyes at it and then ended up watching the whole thing.
Yeah, well, Johnny Depp used to never miss.
Yeah, that's true. He's got to detach himself from Tim Burton.
He started missing at some point, but used to never miss.
That is an interesting thing. Is he missing because of himself, or is he missing because of the people he's choosing to work with?
I think the movies he's choosing are the problem. I mean, even the movies that he's choosing that are utterly bizarre and awful, I still think he's bringing a strong performance. So I don't think it's his acting.
Man, personally. I'm looking at his IMDb right now, and I don't recognize any of these movies.
Poor Johnny Depp.
I think he's just doing a bunch of foreign movies right now because he's kind of been poisoned in the United States.
Yeah. Just wants to escape. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. That is it for the discussion question this week. Thanks again for all of those answers, folks. That was a lot of fun. Sorry about the Jurassic Park tangent. The thing is, whenever you bring up Jurassic Park, we're going to talk about it for at least 5 minutes. It's part of our contract with each other.
It is. Have we ever done a full episode on Jurassic Park? Because
we have not.
That would be a two-parter, I feel.
This is why I told you I wanted to do Deconstructing Steven Spielberg just for an excuse to do a Jurassic Park episode, because we couldn't possibly just do one.
No, we couldn't just do an episode on a show just because we wanted to. That's
it'd be
not
ridiculous.
Allowed for some reason.
It'd be absolutely ridiculous. All right. So next week's question, we're going to talk about duty, not poopy. So the question is, how do you define duty? And give us an example of a storytelling where someone does their duty. It can be, stop laughing. You're the immature one. It's not me. I'm not the one who thinks it's poopy. It's you.
Yeah, okay.
You're thinking poopy.
I did try to explain the concept of duty to my kids the other day, and they just kept laughing, so I gave up.
So the question, once again, without anyone laughing, Matt, how do you define duty? What is an example in a storytelling where someone does their duty? And how does the book frame that?
Yeah, I think this is going to be really fun because it's a concept that I actually think is pretty important and pretty interesting and pretty complicated. And I look forward to people's thoughts on this.
Me too. But that is going to do it for us here this week. Next week, as I said, we are completing the fourth novel. We're completing The Eyes of the Dragon next week.
Awesome. Remember, you can reach out to us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com or on Twitter at kingslingerspod, and the subreddit r/doofmedia is a great place to answer the discussion question or just to post threads about cool Stephen King or media related stuff that you've stumbled upon this week.
Hell yeah. And if you're not already subscribed to Kingslingers, make sure you do so you never miss any of our episodes in the future. You can find us basically everywhere that podcasts exist. And you should, honestly, just in the case, subscribe to multiple, because you never know. You might miss one.
It's true. And if you like any of our shows and you want to support them, then please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. Special thanks this week to new patrons, Strifey, Mike J, Eleanor A, and Big Ferris 74. Thank you so much, folks. We hope you enjoy all the bonus content. Like Scott said earlier, we have a whole year's worth of Other Levels of the Tower episodes where we talk about 12 different King adaptations. So there's a lot of content there for you.
So much content, and more to come in the future for sure. But of course, if you cannot afford to donate, that is absolutely okay. This show right here will always be 100% free. Maybe we shouldn't totally promise. This show will most 99% be 100% free. You can and there are tons of other ways to help the show out. You can share this podcast with all your Stephen King loving friends. Just talk about it incessantly. Tons of ways. And of course, you can always help us out by leaving a rating and a review. This week's Spotlight review comes from Recall3613, who gives us 5 whole stars and says, "A new path on the beam. I've listened to the Dark Tower series many times and read it more when I was younger. Soon after discovering this podcast, a new light was shown to me. The Lord of the Rings similarities, the insights I didn't know from references in the books. Matt and Scott have made it more enjoyable, richer, with the added depth and details I've missed and they picked up. Having named my son Roland, this podcast has confirmed that I made the right choice. Long cast and pleasant weeks. Thank you for something to look forward to each week." Well, thank you, Recall.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It always makes me happy when it's a long-term fan who has reapproached the series in a new light. That is certainly one of the biggest worries I had about this whole show, was that like the things we were going to be talking about are just things that everyone has talked about 100 times, and we were going to bring nothing new to these books, especially you who didn't know what people had talked about because you didn't know the books. But it's always good to see that was not the case at all. Yeah, thank God I am such a massive Lord of the Rings nerd that I was able to find all of these extremely niche references.
Definitely. So thank you again, Recall, and thank you everyone who have taken the time to leave those ratings and reviews. Those of you that have left them on Spotify, I see you. I see there's like a few dozen people now, more I think.
Oh, wow.
I'm currently not. I don't know how to read them. I see there's a number. It says 5 stars, and it has a number next to it of the number of people who have left that. But I don't know how to read what they said, so I'm looking into that. So we'll be reading yours soon as I solve that problem.
We will figure it out. Don't let it stop you from leaving a review.
Please no. Yeah, keep it up. It does honestly and sincerely really, really help us. So we appreciate it. But that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you for putting up with our nonsense for another week, and we'll see you right back here to finish another book. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.